Fix the money, fix the world. Now, I'm leaning in here because the star of this video is not going to be me. It's going to be this stuff behind me. And I'm going to try and do it like I normally do in about 10 minutes. And if I'm not looking right, it's because my camera's way over there. I'm working things out. Just trying to get this all done, trying to get this sorted out. I'm going to try and do this in 10 minutes where I'm going to try and fix the money and fix the world. Pardon me if it is going to be a part two, because this is my more than the first attempt at me doing this. So I'm going to try and keep it nice and simple to follow. I imagine there's going to be lots of questions. I'll answer them. Leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. I will respond to everything. But first I wanted to go over the debts, what is owed with the money system, and how do we fix the money system. So first of all, there's a ton of debt. Just in America, there's a lot of debt, and that's crippling the economy because everybody's got to service their debt. More importantly, it's the interest on the debt that's killing them. It's killing them as far as making payments month after month. That's part of the United States is having a problem with too. That's why they want the rates to go down. So let's go over some of this. Let's go over where we're at. Let's start with how much debt does America have? So first off, let's go over household debt. And I'm losing the post-it notes because they're not sticking anymore, but let's see how we do. So I'm going to do it this way. Household debt. We've got student loans, we've got credit cards, we got auto, we got mortgages. Student loans is a big number, okay? Most of these numbers are going to be in the trillions, just as an example. So student loans right now, it's $2 trillion. Now, the rest of the debts on households, $16 trillion. That adds up to a whopping, there's the post-it note that fell off, $18 trillion. That's a lot. That's over 50,000, I believe, 50,000 per household, but it includes mortgages too. So you've got that debt. Some of it is really high interest with the credit cards and the auto loans. It's just really up there. So you've got household debt. Now, I don't propose that you eliminate the debt. I don't think anybody we should default on any debts. But I think we can do something about the interest, and I'll get to that in a moment. So that is household debt. That's individual debt, okay? Now I'm not going to talk about corporate debt. I'm going to talk about the national debt next. So corporate debt, that's an entirely different subject. I'm not going to go there today. U.S. debt. We have the U.S. debt and we have M2. U.S. debt, I lost the post-it note again. U.S. debt right now is $37 trillion, and probably by the time I publish it, it'll be 38. It's going up very quickly. It's going up hundreds of billions of dollars per month. That's how much we owe. So now we're up to $55 trillion. So how much money is available? That's what they call M2, and the economists call it M2. I won't go into that, but it's the measure of how much currency there is in the system. There's only 21 trillion, which sounds like a giant number, and it is, but it's about equal to the household debt, and it's almost half of the U.S. debt. So you put these together, you get 55 trillion. So let's pretend I wanted to eliminate all this debt. And we'll talk about debt for a moment. If I wanted to wipe out all the debt, let's just say you owe $5,000 on a credit card. You write a check for $5,000 to the credit card company. That debt is now gone. They have that $5,000. They're repaid. It's all over. They have that $5,000 of currency. The debt is off the books. So if I was to want to get all this off the books, it would require a check for about $75 trillion, roughly speaking, right? Just call it 75 trillion. So now, how are we ever going to do that? How we could possibly do that? So what I'm proposing is that instead of these things, right? Every time upside down. Instead of this dollar bill, which is backed by nothing since 1971 when we went off the gold standard, that's what we're trying to get back to. We're trying to get to sound money so you can't just print more of this stuff. So right now, you've got a dollar bill that represents all this stuff. Trillions of these make up this. So what is on the table right now? Well, I've seen proposals right now for what they call a 50-year gold bond. And what that means is, let's just say I'm going to create, and I'm disassembling this fictional $100 bill, right? I'm going to make this $100 bill exist out of nothing. Yes, I know it's an envelope, but it's grabbed. But it's a $100 bill, but instead of backed by nothing, like this stuff, right? I'm going to make this backed by a certain amount of gold. And that's what this little dime represents. So I'm going to put this dime in the envelope. So now, if you had 100 of these, or this, backed by a little bit of gold, which one would you rather have? If you understand money, you would want the gold backing, something behind that $100 bill. Now, the difference of this is that this $100 bill is not going to be equal to 100. That's only ever equal to $100 in the future. That's 50 years from now. So if you do the math, right, now how much we want to figure out, like if we're going to back up a new currency with gold, how much gold do we have? That's what we talked about Fort Knox, what's there, how much. So let's go over the numbers of what's allegedly on the books of the United States of how much gold do we have. So that's this corner of the whiteboard. So now we have US gold. So US gold, we have about 8,000 metric tons. That works out to be 260 million, call it 250,000 ounces of gold. If you do the math, at about $3,800 an ounce, that equals $1 trillion. So we are asking for 75 trillion. We got 1. So what do? Well, we take this and we do the math. If this were a bond, what would the rate need to be for this if I was going to make this $100 bond equal to one of these? Okay, I'm going to make it equal to one of those today. What would the interest rate, what would the return on your investment have to be for those 50 years to equal $100? Well, as it turns out, it's about 9 or 10%. There's a thing in math called the Rule of 72, and what you can take is you can take a number, usually in the single digits, it works well for that, for the interest rate, and divide that number into 72, and that will give you the number of years it would take that amount of money to double. So if you took, say, 72 and divided it by 10, you get 7.2. So at about 7 and a little bit, 7 years and say 2-3 months, your money would double. Do that for 50 years, your money would double 7 times. It's about 64, 65 times. Works out to be 100 times if you do 10%, is what I'm trying to say. So if you took this bond, and say, I'm going to back it with some gold, and it's going to be worth all these new bills that I'm creating, it's going to be backed by gold worth $100 trillion. I'm going to make 1 trillion of these, and I'm going to back them by the amount up here of gold. So I've got $1 trillion worth of gold, but in the future, if gold grows at 10%, that gold to be worth 100 trillion. Okay, so this currency, this representation, this $50 bond is meant to represent the gold that America owns. So that is backed by gold. That's get back to a gold standard. Okay, so that happens over time for 50 years. But along that timeline, the entire time, when you take this $100 bond, and I give it to you and say this is going to be worth $100 in 50 years, and it's backed by gold. So it has more value, it has more purchasing power, will hold its value better over time, because gold is one of the better things over time to hold its purchasing power. That's why it's been considered one of the best money representations on the planet. So we're going to go into the last part here. So what's going to happen? Let's just say, like, there's a proposal out there from Judy Shelton, and she's been talking about this 50-year bond for gold as a new currency, and introduced it in July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the United States, to mature on the 300th anniversary. And at that point, you can redeem it for gold or just keep going. Like, obviously, lots can happen in 50 years. A lot of us won't be here, allegedly, in 50 years. Let's see what happens there. But the money will persist, and the purchasing power for our children and our children's children will persist, and we won't be in this debt crisis that we exist today. So what will happen here by 2076, as I'm coming up on 10 minutes, so there will have to be a part 2, the gold standard. We will be returning to the gold standard along this path, because these things, this 50-year bond of $100 bill is backed by a little piece of gold, and we're revaluing the currency. We're revaluing things, because now we're going to be valuing essentially the gold at $100 trillion, but 50 years from now. And by the way, 5 years ago, gold was about $2,000, so it's going up 11% per year for the last 5 years. So a 10% rate of return for gold is not unheard of whatsoever. Lastly, before I go to part 2, I'll talk about how, like, we can fill, and part 2, all right, let's just preview part 2. I'll talk about, for my Bitcoin friends, how silver and Bitcoin will be involved, because I know silver bugs are out there too, how silver and Bitcoin could be involved in the future, and why would you ever create this currency and then make it 0%? Why would you go ahead and write a check for, say, $100 trillion and wipe off all this debt, but replace it with new debt at 0%? Can you imagine what the implications are of that? Imagine if all of your debts, instead of whatever interest rates you're paying now, went to 0%. Why would someone do that? How could that happen? And how does that all piece together what's already in motions? So stay tuned for part 2, and I'll talk about that next. Take care.